I never thought my marriage would be tested like this. We had our ups and downs, sure, but nothing ever felt irreversible. My wife, Lauren, and I had been together for over 10 years. We had a 7-year-old daughter, Emma, who was the absolute light of my life. And despite the little fights, the everyday stresses, I always thought we were solid. Until that night, the argument started over something stupid. At least that's how these things usually begin, right? A stupid fight, a careless comment, and then suddenly, it's an explosion. It was a Wednesday evening, and I had come home from work exhausted. Lauren was already in the kitchen, making dinner, her face tight with irritation. I could tell from the way she stirred the pot, short, aggressive strokes, that she was pissed off about something. "What's wrong?" I asked, dropping my keys onto the counter. She didn't answer right away, just kept stirring. Finally, she let out a sharp breath. "I'm just tired, okay?" "Tired of what?" She turned to face me, her arms crossed. "Of everything. Of doing everything. You come home, you sit down, you expect dinner to be ready. Meanwhile, I've worked all day too. I've picked up Emma, helped her with homework, made dinner, and somehow you always get to be the one who's tired." I blinked. "I never said you weren't tired, Lauren. If you needed help, you could have asked." "Oh, right," she laughed bitterly. "Because I should have to ask my husband to be an equal partner in our marriage?" It spiraled from there. The words got sharper, the voices got louder. I told her she was being unfair, that I wasn't some lazy husband who did nothing. She threw back every grievance she had been collecting for God knows how long. My work hours, my distracted attitude, the way I never really listen when she talks. And I fought back. Told her she was impossible to please, that she always acted like a martyr, like she carried the whole family on her back while I was just... what? A bystander? By the time the fight ended, I was sitting in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen, and she was in the bedroom with the door shut. I didn't even try to go in. The air was too thick, too poisoned with resentment. We didn't speak the next morning. Or the day after that. Emma noticed, of course. Kids always notice. She asked me at breakfast, "Daddy, why isn't Mommy talking to you?" I forced a smile. "Mommy and I just had a little disagreement, sweetheart. It's okay." She nodded, trusting me, and I wished I could believe my own words. On the third day, Lauren finally spoke, but it wasn't what I expected. "I need to get away for a little bit," she said, standing by the kitchen island with a cup of coffee in her hand. I frowned. "Get away?" "Just a few days. Emma's on school break. I thought I'd visit. Sarah, our mutual friend. Someone we'd known for years who lived a couple of hours away in the next state. We used to see her often, but in recent years, not so much." "You've never gone to visit her alone before," I said carefully. She shrugged, sipping her coffee. "I just need space, okay? We both do." I didn't know what to say. She had never been the one to leave, to step away like this. And a part of me, a small, insecure part, immediately wondered if she was really going to Sarah's. But I swallowed that thought. "All right," I said finally. "If that's what you need." She left that afternoon. At first, I tried to convince myself this was good. Space could be healthy. Maybe we'd both cool off and come back ready to talk things through. But the silence that followed was heavier than I expected. She barely texted me. Just a couple of messages. "We got here safe. Hope you and Emma are doing okay." And then nothing. I told myself not to read into it. Emma and I had our own little routine while she was gone. I took time off work, made sure she had fun during her break. We went to the park, watched movies, ate pizza for dinner. But every night, when I tucked her in, I saw the way she hesitated before saying, "Good night, Daddy." Like she wanted to ask about her mom, but wasn't sure if she should. Then, one night, she did. "Daddy," she whispered, already curled, up under her blanket. "Yeah, baby?" She chewed her lip. "Is Mommy coming home soon?" I hesitated. "Yeah, sweetheart, of course." She nodded, but didn't seem convinced. The next day, I texted Lauren again. "Hey, how's everything?" She didn't reply. Hours passed. I tried again. Emma misses you. Just wanted to check in. Nothing. Then, later that evening, my phone buzzed. It wasn't Lauren. It was Emma. She had her own little tablet, and we used a messaging app for when she wanted to send me cute drawings or ask if she could have extra dessert, but this message was different. "Daddy, Mommy is acting weird. My..." Heart jumped. I immediately typed back, "What do you mean, baby?" She took a few minutes before responding. "I don't know, she's just different. She's not acting like Mommy." That was it. That was the moment my stomach twisted into a tight knot. I tried to stay rational. Maybe Lauren was just tired or stressed, or maybe Sarah and she were having deep conversations about life. I told myself not to assume the worst, but I couldn't ignore the feeling clawing at my chest. The next morning, I made a decision. I would go there. I'd pick up some gifts, Emma's favorite toy, Lauren's favorite flowers, something to show I wasn't angry anymore, that I just wanted to fix things. And for the first time since she left, I felt hopeful. I had no idea how wrong I was. I left early the next morning, before I could talk myself out of it. The drive was just over 2 hours, long enough for me to cycle through every possible scenario in my head. Maybe she'd be surprised but happy to see me. Maybe she'd be irritated, tell me I should have called first. Maybe she'd be distant, but we'd talk, really talk, and work through this. But the worst part was that deep down I already knew I wasn't just going there to bring her flowers and apologize. I was going because something felt off. Emma's message had shaken me. Lauren had been distant, sure, but my daughter wasn't the kind of kid to notice things that weren't there. If she thought her mom was acting strange, then something was really wrong. By the time I pulled into Sarah's neighborhood, my palms were sweaty, my jaw clenched tight. I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the familiar house at the end of the street. A small single-story home with a pale blue exterior and a wooden porch. I'd been here plenty of times before, but now it felt foreign. I sat there for a moment trying to steady my breathing. Then finally, I grabbed the flowers and Emma's gift from the passenger seat and stepped out. Sarah had given us a spare key years ago, back when we used to visit more often. We'd done the same for her, just in case. As I walked up to the house, my heart pounded. I told myself I'd knock first, that I wasn't here to spy on my own wife. But then I heard something. Laughter, muffled voices, and then footsteps. I didn't think. I slid the key into the lock and turned it. The door opened with a quiet click. I stepped inside, and then I saw them. Lauren, Sarah, on the couch, tangled together, bare skin against bare skin, their bodies pressed so closely that for a second, my brain refused to process what I was looking at. Sarah's hands on my wife's body, Lauren's head thrown back, lips parted, eyes half closed. My wife. My wife. I couldn't move. My fingers loosened and the flowers slipped from my grip, hitting the floor with a soft rustle. That's what finally made them notice me. Lauren's eyes snapped open. Sarah turned, blinking in shock. For a moment there was silence. Then Lauren bolted upright, yanking a blanket over herself. "Oh my God!" Sarah didn't scramble for a cover. She didn't look embarrassed. She smirked. Couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight. My stomach twisted into knots so sharp I thought I might be sick right there on the floor. Lauren's mouth moved, but no sound came out. She looked, panicked, but not guilty. Not guilty. Because guilt meant you didn't want to get caught. This wasn't a mistake. Sarah, on the other hand, had no hesitation. She tilted her head, her expression amused, as if I had just walked in on them sharing a bottle of wine instead of this. And then she spoke. "Oh, come on," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's not even a big deal." The words punched me harder than I thought possible. I let out a sharp, disbelieving breath. "Not a big deal?" Sarah shrugged. "We're both women. It's different." I stared at her, trying to comprehend the sheer audacity of that statement. My head was spinning, my thoughts colliding into one another, but all I could focus on was Lauren, my wife, The woman I had spent years with. The woman I had built a life with. She was still sitting there, wrapped in that blanket, staring at me like she didn't know what to say. "Lauren," I said finally, my voice tight. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." She swallowed, looked down at her lap, and then she whispered, "I'm sorry." That was it. Not, "It was a mistake." Not, "I didn't mean for this to happen." Not anything that could have made this even slightly less devastating. Just, "I'm sorry," Sarah scoffed. "Oh, come on. Don't act like this is some huge betrayal." It's not like she was with another man. The rage that boiled in my chest was unlike anything I had ever felt before. I took a step closer, hands clenched at my sides. "That's your defense? That's what you're going with?" Sarah smirked. "What, are you going to throw a tantrum now?" Lauren finally looked up. "Please, just calm down. Calm down." I almost laughed. Everything inside me was screaming, telling me to yell, to demand answers, to make her explain how the hell we got here. But I didn't. I just stared at her, at the woman I thought I knew, and then I turned around and walked out the door. I don't even remember driving home. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My pulse roared in my ears. Should have been crying. I should have been screaming, but all I felt was numb. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I just sat there. The house was dark, except for Emma's nightlight glowing softly through the window. I had to pull myself together. For her. I couldn't let her see me like this. I took a deep breath. Another. Then I went inside. Emma was asleep in her bed, curled, up with her stuffed bunny. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe. She was the only thing that mattered now. I wasn't going to fall apart. Not for Lauren. Not for Sarah. They didn't deserve it. The next morning, I woke, up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Lauren, Sarah, the way they looked at me. Not with guilt, not with regret. Just indifference. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. My hands were still shaking, my throat was raw, my jaw ached, from how hard I had been clenching it. I knew I had to tell Emma something. But how the hell do you explain to a 7-year-old that her mother just decided to throw away everything? She was still asleep when I went downstairs. I started making breakfast, more out of habit than anything else. Eggs, toast, bacon, things I normally never cooked because Lauren always did. Lauren. Her name in my head felt like a slap. The front door opened. I turned so fast my neck cracked, and there she was, standing in the doorway like she had just come home from the grocery store instead of a stranger's bed. Lauren looked tired. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she wore the same hoodie she always did when she was stressed. But her eyes weren't red. She hadn't been crying. I couldn't speak. For the first time in our entire marriage, I didn't know what to say to her. She shifted her weight, glancing down at the floor. "I didn't want you to find out like that." I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Wow, that's the part you regret?" "I mean it," she said quietly. "I wasn't ready to talk about it yet." I set the spatula down on the counter, exhaling through my nose. "How long?" She flinched. "What?" I turned to face her. "How long has this been going on?" Lauren hesitated. And that was my answer. I laughed again, this time emptier. "Jesus Christ! It wasn't..." She stopped. "It wasn't meant to happen like this." "Like what? Behind my back? While our daughter is sleeping in the next room?" My voice was rising, but I didn't care. "You didn't even have the decency to talk to me first?" Her jaw clenched. "And what would I have said? That I was confused? That I didn't know what I wanted?" "Yes," I snapped. "Anything would have been better than this." Or ran a hand through her hair, exhaling sharply. "I didn't know how to tell you." "So what now?" My voice was quieter this time. She hesitated again. I think I need space. The words hit me like a brick. Space? I repeated, feeling sick. I don't know what I want yet. I stared at her, feeling like I was looking at a complete stranger. You know what? I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. Take all the space you want. Lauren's eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't expected me to say that. I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I walked past her, out of the kitchen, up the stairs to Emma's room. She was just waking up, rubbing her eyes. Hey, sweetheart, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. She blinked up at me. Daddy, I crouched beside her bed. How would you like to go stay with Grandpa for a little while? Her face lit up. Really? I smiled. Yeah, kiddo. Just for a little bit. She threw her arms around my neck and I held her tight, because I knew. Lauren wasn't just confused, she had already made her choice, and I was about to make mine. I packed a bag for Emma that same day. I didn't tell Lauren where I was taking her. Not that she asked. She just stood there, arms crossed, watching as I moved through the house like a ghost. Emma was excited about visiting my dad. She didn't understand what was happening yet. I wanted to keep it that way for as long as I could. Before we left, I knelt in front of her, brushing her hair back gently. Sweetheart, listen to me. You're going to have so much fun at Grandpa's, okay? I'll come pick you up in a couple of days. She nodded, but then her little brows furrowed. Is Mommy coming too? I swallowed hard. No, baby, just us for now. She hesitated, then nodded again. Okay, Daddy. Lauren didn't say goodbye. She didn't hug Emma. She just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, biting her lip like she was the one who had the right to feel nervous. I didn't look at her as I walked past. The drive to my dad's house was quiet. Emma hummed softly to herself in the back seat, playing with her stuffed bunny. I forced myself to keep my breathing steady, to keep my hands from shaking on the wheel. Dad was waiting on the porch when we arrived. He took one look at me and knew something was wrong. Hey, kiddo, he said, helping Emma out of the car. Why don't you go inside and see if Grandma made any cookies? Emma grinned and ran inside. Dad turned to me. All right, tell me what's going on. I let out a breath. It's over, Dad. He frowned. What's over? I clenched my jaw. Lauren, everything. He didn't ask for details right away. He just nodded, like he already knew. She's with someone else, I said quietly, and she's not even sorry about it. Dad sighed, running a hand over his face. Jesus. I laughed bitterly. Yeah. You staying here tonight? I shook my head. No, I have some things I need to take care of. He gave me a long... Look, don't do anything stupid, son. I didn't answer. I left Emma with them and drove straight home. Lauren wasn't there. I didn't care where she was. I went upstairs and started packing. Not for me, for her. Everything she owned, every little piece of her, I shoved into bags. Clothes, shoes, makeup. I stripped our bedroom bare of her, and then I called her. She answered on the third ring. Hey, come get your stuff, I said flatly. Silence. Then, what? You heard me. Come get your stuff. You don't live here anymore. She exhaled sharply. You're being dramatic. I almost laughed. No, Lauren. Dramatic would have been screaming at you, throwing things, making a scene. This is me moving on. Another pause. Then quietly, You're really doing this? I squeezed my eyes shut. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Lauren came later that night. I didn't help her carry the bags to her car. Sarah was with her. Of course she was. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as they loaded up the trunk. Sarah smirked at me. Guess you're finally out of the picture, huh? I didn't respond. Lauren wouldn't look at me. She climbed into the passenger seat, and just like that, they were gone. I stood there for a long time. Then finally, I closed the door. The divorce was quick. Lauren didn't fight for custody. She barely even showed up to the hearings. She quit her job. Moved in with Sarah. I heard rumors that they were blowing through money, that they were partying all the time. that Sarah had a new business idea every other week, and Lauren just went along with whatever she said. I didn't care. Emma was with me. That's all that mattered. At first, she asked about her mom. I never spoke badly about Lauren. I just told her the truth, that sometimes people make choices that hurt others, and we can't always understand why. After a while, she stopped asking. One day, out of nowhere, she looked up at me and said, "I don't want to go to Mommy's house." I paused. "Why not, sweetheart?" She shrugged. "It's weird there." I didn't push. I just nodded, and that was that. Lauren stopped calling as much. Then she stopped calling at all. Sarah and her disappeared into whatever mess they had created together, and me, I moved on.